Hi, good afternoon. Thanks you for joining me, Dorothea, on Through an Orthodox Christian Lens. I have a special episode for you today, and I've invited my son to speak on the issue of the name of this title of this video, which was 9/11, the Catalyst for Cold War 2.0. And this is part one. We actually are going to do this in a couple episodes. So, Nico. Go ahead and tell me about what you've been doing and researching and what you're about.
Okay, hello everybody. I am my mom's son, and she's been doing a lot of this work, and I followed her and listened to what she covers at times and stuff. And while I'm also doing my own stuff, I'm pretty familiar with the video world. I was part of YouTube for a while and stuff, so I had some things I wanted to share, and I thought, mom's channel is the perfect avenue to do so. And yeah, so. Um, I'm just here. I'm hoping to contribute, and I'm someone that likes to mull over things and theorize. So things that I'll be sharing, I don't want to say are like evidence or anything. It's just I want to encourage people to take time to consider things outside the box. Like, don't just let the framing around in society tell you what to think or mull over. And nobody's saying that we have to know the facts. I'm just saying when you're allowed to think and explore topics of any kind, it allows better thinking. And we'll get into that as we go on. So that's just a quick introduction of me. And, you know, I'm a, guess you could say a typical young guy that explores tons of things. And yes, I do play video games. So there you go.
Okay. All right. So we're going to have a very interesting conversation. I think you all will get something out of it. At least I hope so. So, first thing we're going to go into is something that's going to lead up to what the conversation is going to be about. So I'm going to do that now. Um, maybe not. Okay, that's not the one I was looking for.
Uh-oh,
I lost it.
did you accidentally try clicking the forward arrow on the top left there, that arrow next to browsing? I think you need to move forward so you go that, yeah, not that one. The arrow's next to it. Not that one. Nope. You got to go forward again. Forward. There you go.
Hmm.
It was try clicking forward again.
Okay, here
There
it
you
is. He's the one that knows how to do this. I don't. So, as you know, I did a long video yesterday on the issue of the Charlie Kirk assassination case and how I thought it was full of holes. And the text messaging that was going on was very strange. So, we're going to share this info for you here. It's from Queen of the South Reborn. She's talking about using AI. She put these these text messages into AI. I believe it was Grok to see what came up on that. And as you can see, her question was, how likely is it that this is fabricated just to serve as evidence in an FBI case? So, Nicholas, do you have anything to say on that?
One of the things that immediately stands out to me where I would be, if I was someone to be skeptical, and I'm someone that tends to be kind of cynical here, um, the way that she phrases, how likely is it that this is fabricated just to serve as evidence in an FBI case, is a question that I think is kind of a leading question. And for something like AI, you have to be really careful with questions like that because they'll often try to frame the information so it supports your question to kind of reaffirm what you're already suggested to be believing. Not to say I would dismiss this entirely, but for those watching, I would say I wouldn't really count this as hard fact. I mean, again, it would be something to consider, but and again, there's good points here from what I'm reading, and it's definitely an AI response of, just going through the points. But I would just be, if I were working with it, I would frame it a little differently. Be like, I would show the text to be like, oh, what do you think about this? Just leave it open-ended. And then ease into the discussion and see where it goes from there. Because as I've been working with AI for a bit, exploring models and stuff like that, and using it for information. And AI has good and bad, and we'll kind of get into that here. But this is kind of an example of something that I would be wary on taking information from, especially since there is no follow-up. We don't see any follow-up discussion here. We don't see further questions. We don't try to challenge the AI's view on like, well, why do you say this? Where's your evidence? Things like that. And so unless you do that, it's kind of hard to really see how legitimate the information from this machine even is. So, and again, I like to say leave nothing off the table, but you know, doubt everything. So, um, my point being, we don't have any hard evidence on anything. It's just we're all theorizing based on stuff presented to us right now. So that's
Yeah.
just what I would say on this.
Okay, so do we want to go over these bullet points or do you want to, do we want to discuss what it says here? Do you want me to read it and then go from there or?
You lead. I mean, I just wanted to preface that, but if in case you did want to go into it.
Okay. So this is the results she got from that particular question. So based on what's shown in your screenshots, the content itself. So the Robinson slash roommate transcript is extremely detailed, full of incriminating admissions and conveniently structured like a script. Well, that just sounds like it's stating the obvious there. That's what it says. So that seems
Right.
okay to me. Then there's the real incriminating chats, usually have much more fragmented language, slang, interruptions, and lack of neat narrative exposition. She didn't she didn't ask about that. So what do you think on that?
Um, Again, like I said, I think there's good stuff in here. I'm just, for example, if I were to do like, I would see that and I would do a follow-up question of, well, can you give an example of m- cases where that, where you can look that over? You see what I'm saying? You have to push it to provide so you know where it's coming from instead of just, oh, this is what it is because, well, because why? That's just, it would require investigation, is all I'm saying.
Okay. Then here Robinson explains himself almost like a character in a novel. Um, it does kind of come off that way when you read the text messages, so okay.
Yeah.
The stylistic blend, casual slang plus highly expositional details about rifles, motives, hiding places, etc., feels more like writing intended to document or stage a story than an actual private chat.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like something meant for a murder mystery, something to set the stage.
Okay.
And again, I want to be clear, not to say that all those things aren't possible. We don't know the mind of this person. We don't know their mental state. We don't know how they normally talked. We don't have any records of any of that. It's
Yes,
just
that's
this.
what's, by the way, I hate to interrupt, but somebody actually mentioned that why don't you use one of his other prior texts, real texts, I mean, I assume real texts,
Mhm,
to this one. And I saw that in comments that was never done.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's the point that I think is suspicious to me is they're pulling these texts and we don't have any other lead up that they've retrieved this device allegedly. This is supposed to be from this guy, and that's fine. Okay, maybe it is, but I have a lot of doubts based on how this information is framed. And something to keep in mind also is something even factual can still be framed in such a way to lead towards a point that they want you to go towards. So that's that's something to also keep in mind, even if it is true.
Hmm. So let's skip to the likelihood it's fabricated by FBI case. So if this were genuine FBI evidence, it would normally be presented with chain of custody details, metadata, device logs, warrants, etc., not just pasted text. Agencies don't rely on suspicious, convenient, overly scripted logs without supporting forensics. The style strongly suggests it was made for dramatic or persuasive effect, not pulled directly from a seized device.
Again, all that stuff is I you have to be so careful with this part because like, oh, the likelihood. And I mean, the AI, I mean, it is being, I would say this response is pretty good as far as like it's doing an ifs, if this is not confirming anything, because there's no like, obviously we can't really know for sure who did it and what did it and whatnot. But, for all we know, this could be AI fabricated. But um, looking at this and its responses, one of the things that really bothers me is where's the why? Like, for example, why would the FBI do this? And are there instances of the FBI doing this before? And if so, what were the cases? Why did they do it? Do we know the motives? Things like that. Too many times I see with journalists and stuff, and it drives me up a wall, is nobody asks the why or considers the motives behind the actions. It's just, oh, well, this is what it is. And nobody tries to, try to figure out, well, why would this, like, because you propose a theory. And when you propose a theory, then you have to back it up by, well, what would the motive be to do this? And right now, we're not seeing any of that. So as much as it's like, oh, well, what's the likelihood of this? To me, it seems like a lot of empty fluff because there's no examples of the FBI being presented doing this. It's just generalized statements. And for me, it's not going to win over anyone in a debate or argument. So to me, it's just kind of wasted time.
Okay.
So,
All right. Well, somebody shared that Due Dissidence channel actually shared this, and so I decided to look it up and share it with you all to see what you thought. Those watching can share your thoughts, obviously, under this video. So let's go on from there that we were leading into. I mean, even the FBI does kind of have something to do with the, the history
right.
and what we want to talk about with this 9/11 and the Cold War issue.
Oh,
So,
right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
and let me see.
Right.
So how do I make this? Okay, so let's go from here. So why do you say a 9/11 is a catalyst to the Cold War 2.0? And now you said the Cold War started at when we bombed Japan,
Mm-hmm.
at towards the end of World War II.
Yeah, I have a book here. It's a really good book. I don't know if it's so much in print, but it's called Hiroshima: Why America Dropped the Atomic Bomb. I read this in high school, and when I think I was in journalism doing this, and because I had read the book Hiroshima, which was by that journalist. I can't remember the name right now, but that was really good, where he took the stories of people who lived through that event, and there was some stuff that these eyewitnesses were reporting that weren't lining up with things I had been taught in school growing up. And instantly I grew suspicious and I thought, there's something more to this. They had surrendered, you know, and the emperor was willing to just give up everything after the first bomb very quickly. Yet we dropped the second one. So I needed to know, well, why did we drop the second one if they were already kind of sending the message that, they were done? Which, by the way, yes, the Japanese were very upset about that. They didn't want to quit. That's true. But that book that I showed goes over a lot of the behind the scenes in the government, what was going on, how Pearl Harbor goes into all this. And there's a lot of evidence that Pearl Harbor was also a catalyst to get us into the Pacific War, because many of you may not know this, but I was surprised to learn that the atomic bomb was originally meant for the Nazis and Hitler, but we didn't develop it quickly enough, and so the war was over there. And thus, we didn't know who to use it on, and we wanted to demonstrate the our technology in the war. Well, at the time, Japan was causing trouble with China, and Russia was involved there because they were trying to help China and stuff like that. And that gets into all the historical ties between them as well. But basically, what ended up happening was we were like, well, we need to get involved. And so then, of course, we know we cut trade. We kind of basically prod Japan. We essentially backstab them from, trade. And, I'm sure people have views on this, but the reality is there's a very significant, and this gets back to a significant point in history called the Black Ships, which is when we went over and basically threatened Japan to trade with us. And that's how we even started trade in the 1800s. And so fast forward to World War II. Now we're cutting off trade and doing all this stuff, and it seems like backstabbing to them. And so then they attack Pearl Harbor. That gives us the excuse to get into war because you have to understand that most Americans did not want to get into war at that time. I'm sure, as many of us probably feel right now, we don't want to be in these wars. So we needed a moment like that to get us over there so we could get close to Russia so we could drop the bomb. A lot of people within the military were against using the nuclear bomb on Japan because there were those there that felt it was unnecessary. And the book gets into all the ethics of war at that time and stuff, which is really interesting as well, such as like air raids were considered unethical. They weren't considered right. Um, Things like that. Very interesting. So, but the point is that what people need to understand is there was a lot of propaganda to use this as, oh, we got to save the Americans. We got to do this. We got to do this. We got to drop the atomic bomb because, the Japanese just won't stop. Well, that's not true. We were pushing back. There were reports, military reports that we were winning. We were pushing them back. Yet they really wanted to use that atomic bomb so Russia could see how powerful we were. The problem is we dropped two, and on the second one, the Russians started figuring out how we did it. But the point is, that's what started the Cold War. That was kind of the spark. And from there, it devolved into all those things that we'll get
Okay,
into.
I have a question though.
Mm.
Why were we trying to impress Russia? Why did we all of a sudden want to? Because before that, Russia was our ally in World War II,
Well,
right?
saying ally is a pretty generous term. I would
Hmm.
say Russia was kind of a country that I would say Russia was more of a rival at that time than an ally,
Hmm.
someone that we felt we had to compete with and prove that we were better. And I'm sure this comes also from our connections to Britain and stuff like that. So, and again, I don't remember all the details, so don't take what I'm saying for the with this, but because this gets into, I haven't deeply researched the whole long-standing history of Russia and America, so I can't say on that. Um, I just know that the reason for the atomic bomb wasn't just for Russia, but for the whole world. It was really a ploy to have the whole world basically submit to us, to
Right,
be
right.
like, if you mess with us, this is what we'll do. And none of you have this amazing power that we do. And the whole point is no one else was supposed to get that information, and thus we were supposed to be on top. But of course, within our arrogance and stuff and dropping a second bomb, the Russian scientists figured out how to replicate it. And well, then we all know how it went from there. And the Cold War and the warnings of trying to take shelter from the bombs and all that stuff. So, you know.
Hmm. Yes, I don't really know what history was going on between America and Russia during or before those the World War II or even World War One. So I wouldn't be able to add to that either. But in
The
any
only
case, hmm?
sorry, I just want to say the only thing I know for sure is that Britain and Russia have had a long-standing contentious relationship.
Good point. That's true. Yep.
And because we are, in a sense, a branch off of Britain, I think that's
Britain's
probably
offspring.
contributing. Yeah, I think it might just be part of it. But who knows? That's just me theorizing.
Okay. So you said that was the start of this Cold War, the first one, obviously.
Hmm.
What else would you like to say about this history? Because we're trying to get up to 9/11, so we need to know exactly what leads to this idea of 9/11 being connected to a
Well,
second Cold War.
it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff. I always say that knowing the history is so important for understanding events that are unfolding now or likely to unfold. And one of the things that I wanted to kind of get into, and I had somewhat of um, a summary here for people that maybe don't understand the um, the theory of which I'm proposing is the Cold War 2.0 theory, which is it's a theory that basically proposes that 9/11 served as a catalyst for a renewed long-term geopolitical contrast between two major blocs, the US Israel NATO alliance and the Russia China Iran partnership, and by extension, BRICS. Like the original Cold War that we're talking about, conflicts, these conflicts avoid direct great power wars and instead unfold through proxy wars, regime changes, lobbying, sanctions, and information control. The primary theater is the Middle East and its strategic corridors, with the goal of preventing rival powers from gaining lasting influence there. Temporary setbacks or pauses in policy are not true reversals, but tactical adjustments to avoid overextension or direct confrontation, keeping the strategic window open for renewed advances when conditions improve. This flexible, decades long strategy mirrors the push pause redirect rhythm of the original Cold War, updated for the 21st century tools and actors, basically. That's the summary of what the theory goes on about. And what I'm trying to point at is that I believe we need to recontextualize 9/11 as not just understanding it as a way to get into the Middle East for resources and stuff, although that is a very big reason. There are a lot of players taking part in this play, so to speak. And this gets into we need to understand what our what our involvement was in um, the Middle East historically. And in the mid 1900s, we were confronting the Soviet Union. And to preface, my mom and I are not crazy about the Soviet Union for many reasons, okay? But that said, um, I can't say I'm that thrilled about America's whole stuff either during that time. There's problems on both sides. And we were funding proxy wars against the Soviet Union at that time. And if you're acute listener, you may recognize, wait, a proxy war against Russia at that time. That sounds familiar. That's because that's what Ukraine is showing a lot of signs of being as well. We're repeating tactics that we've used in the Middle East and such against Russia to put pressure and wear them down, we're doing the same now. There's a lot of overlap. Obviously, not everything's the same. There's different circumstances and stuff, but there's a lot of common threads. So when Mom, you were asking about, basically where do we start from all this and such, I think the really important thing for framing this is understanding how the state of Israel fits into all this, you know, how they began and all that. And, I need to be careful how I word this because of contentious stuff. But, I'm just saying these are historical facts. These are just things that happen. There was a group, a lobbyist group that started in America around 1959. And it was basically an early version of what we know as APAC today, which wasn't formally fully established till 1962. Now, there's a really interesting period of which the 1960s kind of holds is there was the 6 Day War and there was the space race that was going on between us and the USSR. And also going on, there was a lot of contention in the Middle East between the US and the USSR. And Israel played a pretty pivotal point in being a kind of satellite for us to have a way to kind of involve ourselves. But it didn't start out that way. We were pretty distant from Israel till after the 6 Day War. And I can get into that, but I have a lot of notes here because it's a lot. So it's going to take me a bit. But maybe you can comment on those things, Mom, and you can talk while I start finding this information.
Well, we only have a little bit to go here before we have to take a break. So, as
Hmm.
I said, this will be in parts because there's a lot to discuss. So,
Hmm.
you said that APAC came out around in 1962 when JFK was in
Hmm.
office. And, he wanted to make that lobbyist group a foreign register as a foreign lobby. And they didn't want to do that. And I believe his brother wanted the same thing.
Hmm.
Um, and we all know what happened with that and the issue of nuclear weapons, the blueprints that were basically stolen, is from what I've been reading, from the Izzies took those. So we will continue on in the next section about all of this because we're starting at that 1962 point and going up, and there's a lot to say. And that gives you time to get your notes ready for us to do the next part.
Yep.
Okay, so we will be back in the next video. Thanks for watching. Thanks for following.